Hello there, Mitko from the End Models here. What makes or breaks a scale model kit? What is needed to qualify the kit as good? This video is inspired by two main factors. One is that throughout my modeling years, I've encountered many interesting people, and all of them with different opinion on what a scale model should or shouldn't be. Of those people, very few impressed me deeply with their thoughts, leaving me with the impression that most of the modelers that are pretentious about their kits are not exactly sure what they want in the end. Some wanted accuracy geometrically wise, others want infinite number of parts, and there is a third group which amazes me the most, and this has been the issue throughout the last decade or so, maybe even two. That is the group that demands the kit to be full with aftermarket parts in the end, emphasizing on resin and photo etch elements, without which the end result should not be considered professional work, so to speak. The other reason was that my video about the SU-33 inspired controversial reactions, and interestingly, people who like the kit tend to refuse to accept that there are different opinions on the matter. That in general goes for almost everything in life, unfortunately, especially when it comes down to art. But not only. If a movie, painting, or an album was considered good or a masterpiece, there is no room for people who think otherwise. But in fact, that is dictated by the common perception, and as we know, the common perception is not always the correct one. For example, common people thought the Earth was flat a couple of centuries ago, and also that the Earth was the center of the universe. Some still do. I will support my views on the subject of the modeling, of course, with few examples, some of which are my favorite in terms of scale modeling. But let's start with my opinion in general. A good kit is a kit that has an excellent fit, geometrical accuracy, fine exterior details, good historical accuracy, deco wise, excellent instructions, and good boxing. Let me break down the order for you. Let's start with the excellent fit. This for me is the most important thing, and you might ask why. Well, starting with Czech kits back in late 80s and later on with Airfix in 72nd scale, I was disappointed, and it was rather frustrating, especially when you're a kid, a novice, and you lack the tools needed altogether to fix that lack of fit. It might be a bitter memory from my childhood, but the most important thing to me still is the fit and how good the kit goes in general. Luckily for me, Tamiya are there to answer my wishes, with many others improving significantly over the years. Nowadays, in the 20s of the 21st century, good fit is simply not enough. Not with the excellent Tamiya kits from the 80s and 90s, which was a lifetime ago. That was the bar set, and it is still there. Now, there is simply no excuse. I have a beautiful example here. One of my favorite kits of all time is the D9R Doobie Bulldozer from Menk. That is 35th scale, and the fit of the engine and the cockpit box is mediocre. And even though the kit itself is a great as an idea, as plastic quality and detailing, the fit of those two sections are not good, especially not to the level to justify the price tag on that kit. Whatever you do with the doobie, there is no way to complete the cockpit outer walls without applying some serious thinking and modeling skills. There is a gap from one side or the other no matter what you do. You can fight with it, you can deal it, but only if you are an experienced modeler. Next thing is geometrical accuracy, and that is the second most important thing for a scale model if you ask me, but it is actually as important as the first. If the kit isn't accurate, it is simply worthless no matter how good the fit is, nor the details, nor the boxing. It should look like a duck, quack like a duck, and be colored as a duck so to be a satisfactory duck. No way around that. Many companies pretend that their kits are very accurate, but in reality, few of them are to the level they should be. It is surprising that toolings from the 70s and 80s holds up to this day simply because they were made with much more responsibility when it comes down to the accuracy, geometrically speaking. There is no rivets, no fine lines, no bells and whistles, but the duck was a duck and that was simply it. Nowadays, so many new ones are being produced that your head can spin, and on top of that, there are plenty of reviewers who get them for free and are somewhat feeling obligated to speak highly, even though they know that isn't exactly the case. In reality, there is much more junk than before, and many kits are being produced solely to fill the gap opened by the need of more rivets, more panel lines, and things like that. Unfortunately, the examples here are many, but if you want geometrically correct kit, you have to listen to the real masters. Like, for example, for Tiger, you might want to ask Adam Mann. For Stux, you might want to ask Panzermeister. And for flankers, you need to go to Flankerman. And I'm talking Mullers here. There are, of course, many others, as well as people that are active tankers or sailors or pilots who build kits in their spare time and they have access. So asking becomes useless when they can check for themselves directly from the source, the real aircraft, boat, or tank. Of course, that historically is not relevant in this case because some of the planes or tanks are vanished. But without geometrical accuracy, a kit is worthless, and if I have to be honest, this is more important than the good fit. Not to me specifically, but at least it is the same level of importance. Next are fine exterior details and interior too. Here I am speaking rivets, panel lines, fins, rakes, scoops, and bulges, without which the kit will miss something if they are missing or not in the proper place. Well, not at first glance, but a more detailed inspection, the kit will definitely deviate from truth. That is rarely the case nowadays, but there are some cases where panels are completely misplaced or misshaped. Like, for example, there was a good article on the flankers in 30-second scale not so long ago, the flankers from Trumpeter, I mean, and how many little things were wrong with them. Now, this is tricky. I have a friend who has flown all variants of MiG-21 from MiG-21 PF up to BIS. He is a Muller too, and we have discussed thoroughly how MF, for example, the plane that he has flown most of his career, can be produced in more than one factory in real life, and the fact that he has flown two distinctively different variants was, this is self-explanatory, but the MF can be with the cockpit of MiG-21 BIS, or it can feature different panels on the outside depending on where it was built. Let me give you an example with Edwards MiG-21 MF. This was a beautiful kit from the get-go and actually still is, probably being one of the top 5 in 48 scale. However, there is a cockpit that is done for one variant of the MF. And if you choose to do this specific MF or one that was from the same batch, it is okay. But if you choose to build the one with the BIS cockpit, then you'll be stuck. You'll be stuck with an inaccurate version or inaccurate representation of the model. Or will you? The thing is, especially with mass produced vehicles, that the more there are out there, the chances to make the accurate one based solely on normal research are slim. You can have the most accurate MF, for example, but as I mentioned, what will you do if your aircraft of interest is with a different panel? Or you don't have the picture to accurately describe some section that was different? Is that bad for the kit in general? Does that make it inaccurate or inadequate? In the end, I don't think so. The kit will still hold to the high standard that it was designed for, and discrepancies of that kind won't ruin the deal in the end. Firstly, because most likely 99% of the spectators won't notice the difference. Secondly, we are far from being absolutely accurate because on a daily basis, items, artifacts, they change. Another good example is that such problems quite often arise from BF and ME 109s simply because of their mass production and the lack of research materials which vanish for one or another reason. Heated arguments and even long term feuds are not unheard of on the subject. So you need a kit was properly researched, exactly like Edwards MiG-21, although their MiG-21 MF might be very good, but their derivative being the MiG-21 BIS is not the same case. For that, I will speak a little bit later in the video. The next thing I look for is good historical accuracy, deco-wise, and this is another thing that I need to put some examples in. That goes here, the good historical accuracy, I mean, for the color and or the camouflage, not only the decals. If you don't have good representation of the real thing on the instructions, no matter how detailed or filled with aftermarket stuff your kit is, it will be no good in the end. I've seen great examples that are so messed up in the end simply because camo schemes are hard edged where they should have been soft edged, or numbers are wrong, positioning is wrong, decals are misplaced or are completely missing from the upper surfaces, for example. The decals, well, the greatest example of that is the Airfix Typhoon in 24th scale. There is a Luftwaffe variant of the kit in one of the boxings, a captured Typhoon that is, which is with wrong shaped decals, wrong size decals, and missing swastikas. Now, the first two are absolutely inexcusable, the wrong shaped decals, I mean, especially when it comes down to such large scale and such price tag. The second, the swastikas, I mean, is more suitable as a basis for an argument. How good a kit can be accuracy wise if you're missing absolutely significant markings like the swastikas on most visible part of its overall appearance is another question. Actually, you gotta be kidding me. Missing such thing from a captured vehicle, it is ridiculous. Another good example on the subject of accuracy, camouflage, or color wise is the Mitsubishi Zero and the right color of it. You probably know that for almost 6 decades, people argued the correct nuance of the green, and in the end, somebody made a breakthrough, and what happened? This Zero wasn't even green to start with. This is a very good example of rivet counter ridiculousness in scale modeling. Rivet counting here is extended not only to panel lines and rivets, but to colors as well. But too much of anything is bad. The excessiveness in modeling is present all over. And even though I mentioned the proper camouflage above, and some will try to turn that against my presentation here, it is not exactly the same as the other things that I mentioned. The reason for that is every human being sees the colors in different nuance. So if you don't paint your Thunderbolt olive drab, but use dark green, it is not a big deal. And that goes to some extent for the Mitsubishi Zero as well, actually. If you paint your Thunderbolt with Luftwaffe dark gray, on the other hand, or blue, which is quite inaccurate, that will be a mistake. Same goes for camo schemes, like the example for Blizzard F-16 from the Nellis Aggressor Squadron. I have seen freehand attempts, quite good, while the plane in reality is painted in another fashion. It is strictly hard edge. So all in all, having the right decals in shape and size, having the proper color in the instructions are both vital. And by proper color, I don't mean a nuance here. If it is green, it can be a variations of the similar green, but it cannot be blue green or gray green. It can be green. Again, Tamiya, as well as other companies that invest significant amount of research and use only existing artifacts for the basis of their research, have to be considered here as a bar. If you just release a kit with decent amount of imagination in it, you won't have a good kit in the end. I can give a great example with Edward again, but I prefer to keep that to myself at this point because I have worked on a exact same project with a New York-based company, and it will be inappropriate to praise one over the other when I'm involved directly into the research and production process. Actually, I help a lot with the pictures that I personally made in a near base on a specific jet. But there are cases like that, even with great companies as Edward. The next thing is the excellent instructions. This is the basis for more serious arguments, but I have a firm belief that I am, if not 100%, then at least generally, let's say 80 to 90% right on that specific matter. And to prove that point, zoukei-mura made their state-of-the-art example with their line of instruction sheet, which are many things. First one is they look fantastic and they represent the kit as more than a plastic piece, but rather as a copy of the real thing. Everything featured on the plane that deserved special attention is thoroughly described and pointed out, clarifying which part serves for what purpose. A lot of things can be learned even if you're a shape lover, let's say with their F4 Phantom, and it is only necessary to open the instruction sheet and read through it. Every little detail that deserved attention, it was pointed out and explained to some extent. That can open many doors for further exploration and even can start a new passion. I can go as far as to say that they can inspire your career and make you start it if something while you research within their instruction sheet inspires you deeply. Try that with kinetic instructions. Another thing with zoukei-mura is that their instructions are made to resemble the real technical manuals exactly like they looked before in the day when it comes down, especially with their Second World War planes. That is beyond inspiring, but I won't focus on that since it is not typical for the rest of the manufacturers. But another great example for a kit with not so good instructions is, well, take any of the line of mini art kits that I like a lot. They are great overall, pretty self-explanatory, but they lack the historical overview of the kit, any explanation what is what inside, although they often feature interior, and trust me, when you lack the knowledge, knowing only what color you should use to paint something is simply not enough. Is it a radio? Is it a loading mechanism? Is it a portable heater? Well, go figure. There are plenty of research materials nowadays, but with many companies, the need for that is omitted. When you combine that with the trust you have in them for doing the proper research for you and providing you with accurate painting, decaling, and historical information, you can spare yourself days in reading throughout the books just because you want to be as close as possible to the reality. That effort should be made firstly on behalf of the manufacturer, then eventually and only eventually on behalf of the molder. A good kit with missing information is not a serious enough effort. Again, mini art are a great example here. Such wonderful kit, for example, T54, highly detailed, many parts, sometimes tricky, but challenging mostly in the pleasant way. But the lack of information about the T54, T55 is devastating. Another example is if you remember MI24 from Zvezda, repacked by Edward. Do you remember the booklet inside? Not that all kits can be like that and keep the normal price tag altogether, but there should be at least an attempt to tell something about the real thing, just like Edward did with their limited edition. Cleverly and clearly arranged instructions without any part number or letter errors is something vital for a kit. Great example for that is Dragon. Well, it's probably useless to talk about that, but you know a lot and how messy their instruction sheets are. Also, kits that feature oversimplified instructions like Zvezda. This is another end of the spectrum, which is ridiculous. I try to avoid those. No, thank you. Finally, a good boxing. This one made a lot of people to act like they were pinched in the video that I made about the SU-33. Yes, boxing is important, and yes, taking out the kit means more than one thing. For example, I have a kit from a company that, upon arrival, was missing the clear sprue. Factory sealed, just like the normal ones, but it was missing the whole sprue, not only a part of it. Now, not expecting a good large kit upon receiving it just to be sure that nothing is missing is far from smart. Tell me, please, those with the complaints about my thoughts on the mini base boxes, which, by the way, goes for many others as well as mini art. What if you have spent about $200 to $300 on a kit like that, and let's say not existing anymore company like Wingnut Wings, your kit comes with a missing piece, you never inspected it, and what then? What will happen when in 2 years from now, when you start building your kit, there is a missing sprue? What if, when you open it, because you have expressed some sort of sanity and curiosity and checked everything thoroughly, unlike I just mentioned, uh, took out the sprue or two from the envelopes and never managed to put them back, what if then something forces its weight on the semi-closed box because it is too small and smashes the contents inside? This happens in the storage rooms. Even if it's unlikely it happens, what will you do then, 2 years from now? When you have something bent, the company is not existing anymore, and you're stuck with a piece of plastic that is deformed. Are you still gonna pretend that the box being inadequate is not a big deal? Or you'll be happy to have ruined the kit because it was put back in your stash in a box that, although it was meant to be the main protection of the spruce, it was designed mostly to be an eye candy, and its main job was not done. The kit is ruined because the box was worthless. Well, Proper boxing is indispensable, firstly, because kids spend most of their time while with us in their boxes. A kid usually survives more in a box than after being built for more than one reason. Also, the box is the only serious means of protection of the contents, which, by the way, if are with the contemporary design in thickness, are doomed if not packed well enough. The box's secondary purpose is to attract your attention in the store, but that is not the main one. However, Chinese manufacturers, which are usually greedy and eating each other by the fierce competition that they themselves present, are exploiting the secondary purpose, often omitting the first one, just with the one single purpose to sell more kits. They do not care will you build your kit with good condition plastic. They do not care where you will keep your kit, how you will close the lid. They care only about making more money and selling more kits. That is not the case with players like Tamiya, and I have never seen zoukei-mura, Wingnut Wings, or company of that level to go that road. Their first goal is to give overall satisfaction. Satisfaction, though, with the points presented in the video means more than infinite number of parts and infinite number of subassemblies, contrary to some beliefs. A kit should be bought because of its representation of the real thing, while I was criticized by a person who bought the SU-33 not because he was interested in the flanker, but rather because the kit featured many parts. Come on, are you freaking kidding me? I am not, nor I think most of us should be into scale modeling to challenge myself with many parts. I am in it because I like the miniature of the real thing to look like the real thing when it's completed. I don't care if the Mia or mini base or mini art will make my F4 or SU-33. I care only about it in the end to be as close as possible to the real thing. It might be 20 parts, it may be 2020 parts. You are, of course, free to take this all differently, but since this is my channel, this is my opinion, and this is the way I express it, if you don't like it, you're free to leave at any point. I do not make good videos, they are not professional, not edited well, because I don't think it deserves the effort. But this is how much I care for YouTube and the fact that they compensate you for your efforts more or less at the minimum wage for the time spent to make the videos, if you come to calculate it, which in the end are being ranked by an algorithm. So, anyway, however, for those who watch, and I do hope this will be useful enough, it might be not professionally edited, but still it might bring some value. And those, of course, are my own personal views on what makes or breaks a kit. In other words, if you bought the most detailed kit because it features intricate subassemblies and you expect a very good result because of that, you're dead wrong. You have to have most of the features mentioned in a kit in order to have a good overall result. And one last thing, the kit's longevity is one of the very important things to be mentioned here. More appropriately said, the longevity of the design. Hasegawa Phantoms, for example, are 2 decades old. The Mia's F-15 is the same thing, Rafale from Revell 2. There are even more extreme examples, as some artillery tanks, but in general, a good kit is this kit that can survive longer than the rest released about the same time. Mini base kit that inspired this video partly is on the same idea basis as the aviation art kinetic based their SU-33 that was superb released only a few years ago. What do you think happen, and why do you think it didn't survive? Uh, in the same time, do you think the Mia's 32nd scale Corsair or Spitfire are about to be substituted anytime soon? I doubt it. There is an interesting battle going on with the F4s from zoukei-mura Academy and now the Mia upcoming, but in general, this is quite different manner. Um, the longer overall the kit survives throughout the years, the more value there appears to be in it, and even more so at the date of its first release, if you come to think of it. Look forward for the MiG-21 that will substitute Edwards. Good luck with that. But this isn't the perfect kit either. I will make a slight deviation from the main subject here, although what I'm about to say is somewhat related and you will see why. So, MiG-21MF versus BIS with Edwards releases, and although they are both Edward and they have its legacy, a BIS variant is quite inaccurate. In real life, BIS is about an inch larger in its intake diameter. There are other differences as well, but that one is the most interesting and most notorious when it comes down to the fish bed. The solution to that problem is to switch the nose with the resin substitute because although very small, the difference can be made very visible, especially with some painting techniques. That goes the other way around too, meaning that you can make the smaller intake look larger using some tips and tricks painting. Even though that wouldn't satisfy the professional modeler, nor it will solve the problem completely, it will do the job to some acceptable extent. Edward knew that, and maybe this was their main reason to not change the kit entirely. And I too find it very reasonable. However, this is a good example for an excellent kit that is not so excellent in terms of accuracy, and in the same time, that is being presented in an acceptable and, despite being inaccurate, as many would say it is, presentable way, let's say. So I think it is good enough, and I believe that many do think as me because, in the end, the kit is still a hit. Another question that many ask that is relevant to this discussion is, do we need another 109? Yes, we do. Hasegawa tooling is obsolete. Revell tooling is far from it could have been, especially in the last decade, and that is why we do need another kit. We need it because this is a legendary aircraft in 13-second scale, and if we get to see a decent Spitfire in the face of the Mia kit or kits, there is no reason to see its arch enemy left aside. There should be a kit, and there should be a kit at least at the same level. So when zoukei-mura announced their 109G, that came to us as a surprise to many, but I think it's only logical to have such kit. In reality, so far, nobody managed to present a kit that good as the Mia's 32nd scale line of kits, and that is based on the criteria mentioned earlier in the video. Again, what we need are new toolings of 109, Focke-Wulf 190 as well, and we need, but not so much, P40s, for example, or Stork, or kits like that, simply because they were not so famous. Or let's make a correction here. We need them, but let's first cover the legendary planes with a decent line and then think about the rest. What purpose an F101 Voodoo would serve if we have never seen a decent F4 on the market? Luckily, this isn't the case. And if you were left with the impression that I think the Mia are the best, I do. And you might ask why. They are because they produce accurate, perfectly fitting, available almost everywhere, and well-packed kits which, even though are slowly but steadily getting pricier and their details being put in additional packings, are still well ahead of the competition as a whole. They might lack the finesse and sophistication in armor detailing compared to Mini Art or Mank, and their jets might not be beautifully done as 48 scale zoukei-mura or similar kits, but the whole deal is unbeatable. That is why the store owners that I know always say that Tamiya sells no matter what. The reasons for that are stated in this video as well. So if you wonder what is a good kit, take a look at their line. And it is not a limitation whatsoever. They are just a good example, and I like them a lot. Hasegawa, Revell, Menk, and others have their fair share of that. They have great kits that will stand and for years to come. But the real serious players like Wing Not Wings, may they rest in peace, zoukei-mura and such, they are still unbeatable. Their investment and will to produce something at the higher level is simply unbeatable. That is it. So thank you for watching. I hope that this point of view was nice to watch, and hopefully you learned something. And I will see you in the next one. P.S. Another thing about the infinite number of parts that some people find overly attractive at a kit. All the guitarists I know that are fairly good, and by that I mean that are about 100 to 1,000 times better than me, are very attracted to 7 or 8 string guitars. For some, the reason is that if they own or play an instrument like that, that will make them virtuoso players and somehow will make them more talented and eventually more distinctive. They consider themselves different because of that extra string on the guitar neck. Take a look at the giants and let me know which one of them plays a 7-string guitar. Hendrix, Clapton, or Satriani maybe. None of them, they don't care. Some play even 5-string guitars. You know what I'm talking about and who I am talking about, the one with the drugs. It is pretty much the same thing with the models. Buying a kit solely because of the number of parts inside the box is ridiculous. And that is to say the least. And it is a territory reserved for modelers that have lost their true way into the hobby, substituting it with the burden of complex building instead of a pleasure of looking at the large collection of finished models arranged in an attractive fashion. As I've said before in my videos, those are usually the modelers that are not specifically good painters and the ones that lack the focus and the will to learn the painting process thoroughly. A scale model is not about the parts in it, but about the final look that should represent reality in smaller form. Same goes for rivets, bulge, or recess, but that will be in another video. It's a long discussion, but that is too part of the distorted reality that maulers consider as a must nowadays. Once again, thank you and take care.